Hello everybody and welcome to my video on the cell cycle control system. The cell cycle is very intertwined with the processes of mitosis and not so much of meiosis, as mitosis is the exact replication of cells as demonstrated in this picture, in which each hamster looks exactly like the other, which is a demonstration of how each cell will look like the other in the cell as it replicates. In this broadcast, we'll talk about the cell cycle control system and what makes it so special and what makes it go work. So all begins with checkpoints. There are three main checkpoints: the growth 1 phase, the growth 2 phase, and then the mitosis phase finally as it divides into two cells. Also, we have the signals that lead to each part of the cell cycle, which is part of the cell cycle clock, which is also very important, and it's based on proteins called cyclins. Um, Cyclins are they aren't really anything, they're just proteins, but when they're combined with enzymes called kinases, they control each part of the cell cycle and when each phase occurs. And two examples of CDKs are MPF and PDGF, which respectively are maturation promotion factors and pelleted derived growth factors. We'll also talk about disruptions on the cell cycle, which can lead to cancer and increased duplication of the cells, and which leads to tumors, and if that goes unchecked, it will lead to death eventually. Okay, we'll begin with checkpoints. Okay, so the cell cycle really relies on checkpoints they're basically stoplights, if you want to take this analogy, in which each part of the cell cycle has a part. Like in the first growth stage, there is a checkpoint right around there that either tells the cycle to finish the whole cell cycle and divide, or it stops and goes into a phase called growth 0 phase, in which it does not divide, does not duplicate, or does not replicate. Very good synonyms. The cell just performs what it's supposed to do, and this is really related onto the density dependent cells, which if it grows too much and goes unchecked, then it could lead to cancer, but we'll talk about that later. Another growth checkpoint is the growth 2 checkpoint, which is right around there, and this basically allows the cell to grow again before it enters the mitosis phase. And then there's the mitosis checkpoint right about there, which tells the cell to divide into two and go through telophase and whatnot. Okay, next we have the cell cycle clock, which is very intertwined with cyclin-dependent kinases, which are enzymes that are attached to proteins. As shown in this graph right here, cyclins are very intertwined with the cell cycle, as you know, shows around here. The different cyclins control different parts of the cell cycle. Like this right here is the checkpoint that initiates the whole cycle, and as you can see, it is very required for the whole cell cycle, as shown in the concentrations. As I can tell here, cyclin E initiates the S phase, the growth 2 phase is initiated by cyclin A, and cyclin B completes the cycle with mitosis. Okay, we'll continue with MPF, which is the maturation promotion factor, or the mitosis promoting factor. Two names for that, in case you were confused. The mitosis promotion factor initiates basically the mitosis phase and assists the cell in splitting into two. As it goes through the phases, you can see it spikes right before mitosis and right before it occurs, and continues so on and so on. This is mitosis promotion factor in meiosis, well, I mean, it's a meiosis promoting factor, if I can say it that way, which shows it ovulating in metaphase 2 and then splitting into 2. That went opposite way. Okay. And then we'll talk about, okay, and I am talking about PDGF, which is the platelet derived growth factor. Probably did not say that right. Um, Anyways, it shows it is a cell. It's cell fragment called platelets, which, when binded, triggers a signal transduction pathway that allows the cells to pass the G1 checkpoint or the initial checkpoint right there. Oops, went too far. Too far. Wait a minute. Hold up. Okay, right there. And um and stimulates the fibroblast division not only in the artificial conditions of cell culture but in an animal's body as well, which is shown in how it's basically crucial to a cell survival when it splits and also when it moves around in the cell. We'll be focusing mainly on this part as it splits into mitosis, more cells. Okay, and finally we'll talk about the loss of the cell cycle control. The main cause of the loss of cell cycle control is cancer. And cancer is when a cell is just lost complete control and just keeps on dividing and does not have any control, just doesn't stop dividing. And it's a terrible disease because the cell immune system recognizes the cell as foreign and it begins to eat itself until if it cannot eat it, it will just continue spreading and spreading, and then a tumor forms, which, as shown here, these are normal cells, and this is a cancer cell. And here's a close-up of what a cancer cell looks like, and it's a bunch of cells grouped together because it just lost control of density, or the density-dependent inhibition, in which cells just, when it grows too much, it just stops growing, but it just does not stop growing. And this is a terrible disease, and if unchecked, it can lead to a lump, sort of like forming, but I couldn't exactly show that on this PowerPoint. It's pretty morbid and grotesque. And if unchecked, it can spread to other parts of the system as a metastatic tumor and form other places. So it's just really bad. And that kind of concludes our presentation on the cell cycle control system. And I hope that helps.